Hi, welcome to Module 3.2, and we're still talking about estrangement. I decided to add a special segment about boundaries because it's so connected to estrangement. Estrangement happens because there is a lack of boundaries and respect of boundaries for the most part. And so it's also healed, and you can invite somebody back into your community if there is an understanding of boundaries. Because boundaries help people feel safe. And boundaries are the referees of relating. So if someone is being invited back into the unit, or if someone leaves a unit, it's because they're stating the lines were so blurred that everyone did whatever they want, how they want it, and it created a lot of pain and a lot of chaos. No one wants to feel unsafe all the time. It heightens your alert system. It's not good for your cortisol levels and your stress and your immune system. It creates turmoil within your body. So boundaries are a healthy format to keep the flooding from happening, because remember, the psychological flooding, the emotional flooding, the relational flooding, that all contributes to estrangement, quitting, and walking away. So if you're going to be someone who teaches boundaries or execute boundaries, you're going to have to begin to establish the route of how will you execute your boundaries? How will you live in boundaries? How will you manage boundaries? The first step is understanding that most people are boundaryless. And so your declaration on obtaining boundaries is going to threaten people. And so it's going to change the natural flow of the relationship. Even though the flow is unhealthy, it's still going to disrupt the flow. And people like flows, even dysfunctional flows. But your decision to create a world that's safe and healthy is going to take you stepping away from your system in love, not creating a gap, but just stepping away mentally after you assess what type of system is this? What's creating the stonewalling? What's creating the estrangement? And then after you become aware, you're going to need support, because you're going to have withdrawals. You're going to feel like a traitor. You're going to feel like, who am I to set new boundaries? Or who am I to come against generational patterns and systems? I am the outsider. I'm creating conflict. I am the problem. I'm the whole problem, because I am going in a different direction from all my family members. So it feels like you're swimming upstream, and you are, because most people in dysfunction and in relationships, they're just going with the flow. But when you decide to set boundaries and create safety, that makes you very intentional, and that makes you very methodical. And so it takes courage and it takes consistency, but it also takes support. If you try to establish boundaries without support, it's going to be very difficult, and you may revert back to the dysfunction. Or you may just say, you know what? I can't go into this family. It's too volatile. I'll just stay out, and I'll just send cards, or I'll just send texts, because there's no safety and there's no trust. So establishing a support system is important. The support system can look like a pastor. It can look like an unbiased therapist. It can look like a trusted, mature friend. You want someone who is mature and who doesn't have the cutoff syndrome or the cancel culture. Ladies, if you've ever been to the hair salon and you've gotten someone who is not skilled, they can look at your hair and they tell you they're going to trim, but you end up with a whole cut, because they were not able to maturely see which part was damaged and what part was good and able to be salvaged. And that's what it is with relationship. There are some things that can be salvaged, but you have to look at what needs to be trimmed. So I like to look at boundaries as trimming, and I like to look at estrangement as cutting, negative estrangement as cutting. So cutting and canceling, you know, those messages we get at the end of the year on Facebook, I'm canceling, I'm going into a new year, new, and everybody who's not with me, they're getting cut off. Well, that's because you're not a professional, or you're not invested in trimming. So you cut good hair, you cut good relationships because of the fragments, or because of the the ends are split and they're less than perfect. Now, don't get me wrong. You do need to trim a hair that where the ends are splitting, because that split will come up and it'll destroy the whole hair shaft. So the objective is to learn how to trim and learn how to recognize unhealthy hair. So the first step, like I said, is trimming and being intentional about getting with people who are able to maturely help you stick to the trimming process, that won't condone, yeah, cut your family off. Oh, I see how they are. They're not right. I wouldn't deal with that. I do not trust people who speak negatively about family members and they don't know both sides. And it shows a lack of character, because if you value family, then you're going to be an opponent. You're going to be a supporter of the family, even if you don't know the issues. You're going to be positive. Negative people talk about cutoff. Negative people talk about everyone's a hater. But you find somebody who can hold you accountable, because there's some things that we do in relationships that we need to check our thoughts, and we need someone to be able to, sit in the middle and mediate our thoughts and the way we're responding in the relationships. So find out who you can get to be unbiased and to help you and to support you as you move towards health and trimming. Boundaries are not weapons. They are not. And that's how I see on the internet, because people are just not mature and they're not savvy in therapy and psychology and therapeutic skills. So they run with one idea and they're like, cut people off, cancel culture. And boundaries are not weapons. The whole intent of boundaries are love lines. Love lines to protect the individuals who are loved and to create an Eden experience, so that people don't have to run away from the relationship, so they can rest in the relationship, so that they can stretch out, take their shoes off, and grow in the relationship. Good boundaries do that. Be aware of environments where there's no boundaries, because anything can happen if there's no boundaries. Boundaries are not weapons. They're not to be weaponized to just keep people out. That would be called a rigid boundary. When you set boundaries because, you call it a boundary, but really it's you not willing to deal with people because you're intolerant and you don't have the energy, or you don't want to have the energy, so you call it protecting yourself. But boundaries are two-way gates or fences with gates that open both ways. But there is a gate. And so when you're safe and when the rules are followed, you get to open the gate. But in a rigid boundary, if you notice with a rigid boundary, there is just an ironclad system that doesn't allow any gates. It's just, those cars you see and they don't have, any doors in the back, the vans you see with no doors. I'm always afraid of that. I'm like, what's going on in there? And the windows are dark. But there should be a gate. Even if there's a lock and there's a code, you should be able to get in. But in a rigid boundary, there's no gates, there's no getting in, and there's no getting out, so there's no true connection. That's more used as protection. And then there are porous boundaries, we know, where it's just a fence, but then the gates open and people can just come in and out as they please with no reference to timing, with no reference to anything. So we want to know that that's not healthy either. You get to have a lock on your door and a front door. It's like having a house without a door. Because society is what it is, we help keep other people safe so they don't go to jail and they don't harm people and they don't, or meet somebody with a gun, because there's stories of 70-year-olds who have guns and you cross into their property and you're going to get shot. So boundaries keep intruders safe and keep the occupants safe until people learn how to follow rules and love people and take care of people. Boundaries keep everyone safe. Boundaries is everyone minded. But if you have porous boundaries, that means that people just come in and out. It's like fluid and there's no direction of the flow of water or the flow of traffic. And that shows you're a people pleaser and you're afraid to say what you need or want, or you have such an insecure attachment that you need to feel connected to people at any cost. And then there's healthy boundaries. I just went over it as well. It's the gates It's the fences with the gates that open both ways. And so we want to strive for that. Healthy boundaries are what we strive for. And it takes for the person that is stating the boundary to first be willing to keep the boundary. Because we like to put boundaries on other people, but we have to become disciplined, and if we're going to maintain discipline and enforce just the discipline of boundaries. So boundaries, again, they're protective lines. I call them love lines, AKA love lines, and they protect valuable property. And your family is your most treasured gift that you can take to heaven with you, or they can meet you there, I should say. So you want to respect the gift that God gave you by not letting anyone destroy it, not letting outsiders tell you how to love your family, and not yourself being selfish, but valuing the gift of family and creating the safety. Now, there are defining boundaries, and defining boundaries have to do with your core values. These boundaries are you're expressing to the family and to everyone that this is who I am. This is what is important. This makes us us. You know, we don't hit each other. We don't yell at each other. We don't sexually violate each other. These are the core values that we follow God. We're Christians. We adhere to the Word of God. We're kingdom builders. We lean towards things that the King leans towards, and that becomes our defining boundaries. And your defining boundaries should be non-negotiable. If you're in a relationship with people and then with family members, and they're asking you to abort your defining boundaries, you have permission not to. That costs too much. The only way to define who you are is to set your boundaries that you won't cross, that express your character and your integrity. They ask you to lie. They ask you to do things that are unethical. Even in family, I'm not doing it. I've had people expect that I would, tell a lie about living arrangements so people can go to schools or different things. And I've had to come out and say, I'm not going to be able to do that. And you want to know that your defining boundaries are respected. Because if people don't respect your defining boundaries, they don't respect you. And that's the one you can't negotiate. You might be able to change other boundaries, but your defining boundaries are concrete. Those are the boundaries that you do not change. And then there's protective boundaries. There's the realm of protective boundaries, and we're going to talk about a list of those. Protective boundaries, again, they're the lines to preserve the unity of the family, the property of the family, and create safety. You are safe here, and you will not be exploited or abused here. So the property value boundaries include financial. You have a right to have financial boundaries. You have a right, and by having these, you don't have problems later on in the relationship. If you verbalize and establish your mode of giving money, you don't have to go back and readjust it and offend someone and cause an estrangement. You get to start out with, my money is my money, and I share it with whom I want it to. I don't owe anyone anything. Even if you took care of me when I was young, I choose to give to you. You were supposed to. If you're a parent, you're supposed to take care of me. And I show my appreciation by blessing you with my resources later. But God doesn't even make us give him finances. So your finances belong to you, and you get to decide how you choose to share them. I think that's beautiful. I think that makes that giving more beautiful, because when someone gives to you, that's their expression of, it's mine, but I decided to share with you in opposition to, you owe me and I'm entitled. And that's what happens with the unrealistic expectations and the breakdowns, because you feel like your money is my money. You're going to buy me this, right? We're at the eating place. You're going to pay for this, right? It's, we're at the store. You're going to buy this, right? You got paid today. I have a bill. You're going to give me the money, right? And that causes a lot of disruption and breakdown and builds resentment that breaks the relationship. Your finances, you have a right to decide what to do with your finances. You have the right. It is your money, your choice. And then there's spiritual boundaries. This kind of goes back up with You're defining boundaries. Where you go to church, that's your business. Who your pastor is, that's your business. You get to decide that. And even if you don't go to church, for those of you who are not believers, if you want to be a non-church goer, that is still your choice because God doesn't make you go to church. So allowing people the freedom to choose their spiritual route is what God does. Yes, when they're children, we don't give them that much choice. We lead them in the way that they should go, and then we expose them to truth, and then they get to decide. But spirituality is a boundary. If people don't want God and if they don't believe what you believe, you don't get to pour your religion on them because God is not pouring his word on us. So we share it, and if people don't want it, we accept it. It's their choice. It's a boundary. Intellectual boundary. You know, what people think, their ideas. We don't have permission to say that was stupid, or why do you think that? That's a dumb thought, or that's a dumb question. That's an assault on somebody's intellectual property. And we want to be respectful and set that boundary. We don't have permission to judge people's ideas, even if we disagree with them. Now, if it's against the word of God, there's a respectful way even to say God's word says this, or that's not true, or there's fact. But to criticize and to attack and to judge in a negative way, that's not helpful, and it's a violation of their intellectual property. People get to set boundaries around their time. Time is more greater than money. You can buy things, but you can't buy time. Time is the most precious commodity. And although we waste it a lot, that's a personal choice to waste it. If I waste my time, it doesn't give you permission to waste my time. And many times in families, we feel like we share everything, and your time is my time. I need you to do this now. I need you to come over and help me with this. I need you to watch the kids. I need you to give your time indiscriminately because we're family and we love each other. That's not correct. Your time, even talking on the telephone, even answering a text, your time is yours, and you get to decide, how you respond, or if you respond, and when you respond, and how long you respond, without being guilted by family into staying longer than you need to stay. Or if you're tired and you need time to rest and you're being asked to come anyways, that's a violation of your time of rest. And you get to set that boundary because that violation will build up. And I'm telling you, the fault lines, the emotional plates begin to shift until one day, boom, there's estrangement. Boom, just like that, estrangement, because there's just so much undercurrent. Your time is valuable. You get to be very owning of your time, and you get to decide who gets it and who you're going to give your time to and what you're going to give your time to. And when people are showing up at events, you just need to thank them for their time. If they give 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, just their time, instead of being entitled and say you were supposed to come, I appreciate your time. I appreciate the effort that you made to drive here. Not just, family is family and you have to. No, it's choice. Boundaries create choice, and it respects choice. So your time is valuable, and you get to set limits on it. And with that, your talent. Yes, your talent. They have movies that show like people want to, they want the discount, or they say, can you hook me up? And they don't want to pay for things, but you get to set a boundary around your talent, which causes people to expect that, I thought I was going to get this free because we're family. I can remember when my sister used to do my hair, she would just say a love offering. If we could remember that, she never charged me, but she appreciated a love offering. So you should be willing to pay the price or a percentage, and not expect that the talent of your family member belongs to you. Yes, they can choose to give it to you free as they choose, or they could choose to give you a discount, or you could choose to give them full price and a tip. But it's not to be taken advantage of that your talent is mine. We have somebody who does hair. We have someone who cooks. We have someone who takes pictures. We have someone who works on cars. No, we still have to respectfully know that's their talent, and we get to ask if they'll help us, and then they get to let us know what the cost is going to be and if they'll be able to give their time and their talent. Of course, there's sexual boundaries need to be created, and it's never negotiated within a family. Sex is out for family members, even though people are dysfunctional sometimes and they have a history of inappropriate behavior. It's not appropriate. And so we always get to draw the line, and we get to send clear messages that it's not appropriate. And even though sometimes, kids explore and innocently or so they explore, it still needs to be verbalized and communicated that your body belongs to you. No one has permission to touch you. I don't care if you're father, pastor, whoever, you don't have permission to, because you're a family member. It's not carte blanche and you just get to do whatever you want because we're family. We're keeping it in the family. No, we're keeping it out of the family with strict boundaries. We don't put everyone in the tub together. We don't make people undress in front of us. We give people their privacy in the bathroom. My grandson, when he started potty training, he said, I need my privacy. And he does. You're teaching respect of your body, and everyone has a right to have respect for their body and their sexual parts. So we talked about the different type of boundaries, and we talked about the importance of enforcing those boundaries. And people sometimes stray away from enforcing those boundaries because they themselves communicate the yes as love. And they communicate the no as not loving and as unkind, but no is a loving, kind word. When you say no, you're saying yes to something else. You're saying yes to respect. You're saying yes to energy. You're saying yes to financial freedom. You're saying yes to respect. You're saying yes to choice and options. And so you have to look at how you learned about boundaries throughout your family, and you have to begin to make a commitment to to shift the paradigm on boundaries. I'm not being punitive. I'm not being callous or cold, but I'm modeling appropriate individuality. Because remember, we are connected in this system, this ecosystem of family and love, but within this unit of love are individuals with different choices and different ideas, different needs, and we need to be able to respect that. We have to look at the messages. Were we made to believe that it is a bad word? And we don't want people to tell us no, so we don't say no. So we think that by saying yes, someone's going to reciprocate that yes. We have to be willing to show one another where we begin and end, because then what happens is when you're exploited or when you come to the end of your rope, then you're upset because you never clarified what you needed and what you wanted. If there is abuse in family systems and you never teach children to choose or their personal space or their personal property, they grow up and it becomes a system where there's just no order. For example, if you have a child, you can teach boundaries within a family this way. If someone comes to your house and before they get there, you're having an event, you tell your children, okay, do you want people in your room or not? Decide before it happens. And then if they try to switch up, you can be flexible or you can say no. But after they decide the boundary, okay, the room's off limit. If they decide the room, then the next step is, what are you willing to share? What's on the table? And then you can take the property and the dolls or the toys that are more expensive or more important to the child and pack them away. You're teaching your child that they do not have to share everything. And so when they're exposed to someone who has boundaries, they'll understand it. Boundaries are duplicated when someone has boundaries. They learn the system of order. So by doing that, you stop the arguments of things getting lost, stolen, or broken. And then you give your child the privilege of you have ownership. You have say. You're helping them practice that no reflex muscle. But if your child is constantly being, corrected for not sharing, then you teach them that they have to share everything. And then if there's sexual abuse or if there's something that's inappropriate, they're so used to sharing. They need to be able to practice that reflex muscle of no. So when they become adults, it's second nature. It's muscle memory. No, no, no. God bless you. No. I can remember my son Emmanuel when he had the sweetest way of being, just to say his boundaries. He was like 3 years old or maybe 4. And we say, Emmanuel, do you want to go spend the night with such and such? He say, no, thank you, and smile. And he still loved the people, but he was just so kind about it. And he learned a no system very early. And can I tell you, to this day, he has really good boundaries, even towards me. It's like, Mom, I can show you, but I can't do it for you. Or, Mom, I'm doing this right now. And if I responded in a way that's traditional, like, no, I'm the mom, I did all this for you, and I crossed his boundaries, then that would be an issue. But he developed his boundaries early. And a lot of adults don't have boundaries because they weren't respected and they weren't walked through the practice of boundaries. You get to walk through the practice of boundaries, like I said, with determining early. Even if you're the host of the party as a family member, you get to decide who's coming, how long they're staying, and what activities go on. It's a neighborhood. If I don't want people outside smoking, drinking, or causing ruckus, I get to let my guests know that we're going to have the events in the backyard or in the house. And the way my community is set up, we don't hang out in the front. So if you want to come, these are the boundaries. If you want to come, there's no drugs. This is a drug-free home. That's setting a boundary for your home. And yes, some people that are boundaryless will be upset, but remember, if you practice healthy no giving, then you can know, you don't have to feel guilty. I still love you, but I get to keep everyone safe. Everyone deserves to be safe, and boundaries are fair. Boundaries keep everyone safe. It's an assertive way to communicate everyone's needs and wants. No drinking here, no smoking here. If you use foul language and you start to get volatile, we're going to ask you to leave here. That's not what we're doing here. And you get to decide that before it happens. And pretty soon people will begin to know that this is what they can expect from you. So they conform. You introduce people to the world of boundaries. Because when boundaries are not in place, feelings are hurt, people are offended, breakdown happens, and estrangement happens. So we're trying to reduce the incidence of breakdown and estrangement through boundary. And we're trying to invite people back because they get to see, no, we have more structure now, and we have more respect now, and we have better communication skills now. We don't just talk to people any kind of way now. We have listening skills now. Please consider rejoining us. But what are they rejoining? You have to give them something to rejoin. Just to come back because we're blood, you're asking them to be back introduced to a volatile, sick, dysfunctional system. And no one wants that, so it keeps them estranged. So you get to decide. If you always have the event at your house, you get to say who wants to have it somewhere else. You get to decide. You get to decide your property, your finances, whatever it is. And that becomes deep in times of death, in times of financial crises. People will tell you, maybe because you're financially stable, how much you're supposed to give. You get to decide with your family or with yourself how much you're willing to give. And you get to give cheerfully. And you get to give not grudgingly and not out of necessity because, they need this. But you get to establish a boundary around this one life in relating with people. You get to decide that. And you have to know, again, that your ability to assert yourself can be impaired by neglect and sexual abuse. You don't know what you want. You don't know what you need. And that's also scary when you're in a system where people don't know what they want and what they need, so there's no boundaries. It's like, that's scary. People like freedoms, But freedom without responsibility and accountability is extremely dangerous. So boundaries attach the accountability and the responsibility. It lets its members know that we're expecting you to do this. We're expecting you to show up like this. We're expecting you to have this moral behavior. And you get to decide if you agree upon it. And that's what happens. Usually people decide, I don't want to be a part of it, so they remove themselves. And you don't have to cut people out. They just look at a system, and if it's too, in their opinion, rigid, because there's too much order, then they want disorder and chaos, they'll leave the family system. And so you're left to manage that. You're left, that's why you need that support system, because you go back and they reinforce, no, you're not being selfish. No, you're not being mean. And no, you shouldn't feel guilty because, you stood up for what you needed and what you wanted and what was best for everyone, what was fair. And you need that constant reinforcement because you have people who are constantly trying to bring the chaos. So chaos and order collide. And it's like light and darkness, ignorance and knowledge collide. But once you come into the light of what's appropriate and what's helpful and what establishes healthy relationships, it's hard to go back into darkness. And those people that are in darkness, you have to be patient because they are not patient at the expense of your health or your safety, but they're going to be a little resistant and afraid to try something new because they are not self-regulated. So the system is asking them to regulate, but they're not self-regulated. But again, people who are not self-regulated are dangerous. They don't have any restraints or restrictions on themselves, so they'll do anything and they'll hurt anybody. And so we are in the business of promoting boundaries, not weaponizing them, not using them against people, but being fair, being honest, being loving, being forthcoming, and setting up systems that are godlike and that create the maximum amount of health so that one person is not bogged down with all of the responsibility. It takes careful consideration of everyone. People who have a lot of codependency, which means that they have an unnatural attachment to other people and they are dependent, their personality, their lifestyle is connected to other people, they have a difficult time with boundaries because they were never shown that there was separation and independence. So now they take on the responsibility. Like Susie in our story, she's going to have a tough time with boundaries because she's codependent. What codependent basically means is that if when you're about to die, you see other people's life flash before your face, that means you're codependent because you're about to die. Other people's life shouldn't flash before you. You're so vested in other people. What they eat makes you fat. If they're not happy, you're not happy. If they're sad, you feel like it's your responsibility to fix. So you're externally focused on making everyone else okay and not yourself. You disregard your personal needs and what you need in your boundary system, and you go beyond that and you join yourself to taking care of other people. If that is your story, you're really going to have a difficult time understanding it's not your responsibility. Parents can be codependent, spouses can be codependent, and what that looks like is you can't have a good day unless everybody else is having a good day. I tell my clients who are codependent, let's check on how the family is doing because I know how the family is doing. That's an indication of how you're doing because if the family's overwhelmed, you're going to be overwhelmed because you're not independent of the system in that way. You feel emotionally responsible for the family. You feel financially responsible for the family. And so what they do impacts your current state and your current mood. And so when that happens, you won't set boundaries. You don't know where you end and they begin. So you become the dangerous enabler in the family. And eventually, if you don't take account of that, then you'll get burned out and then you'll be estranged and leave the family because it becomes too much. And then you'll shut down and you'll either feast or famine. You won't do anything for the family. And now you're resentful because all the years you've poured, now you're the martyr, all the years you've poured into a family system that didn't support you because you never verbalized your needs. You never set up boundaries. And so people know who to go to. Susie is the go-to because she has no boundaries. We all have people in our family. I've been there. Done that. I have t-shirts, but I've been retired innocently, not maliciously, where you just feel like your job is to take care of other people. And even your loving heart can cause you to not set up boundaries because you just want to help. You have to learn what's your responsibility and what is other people's responsibility, because it creates a toxic environment of resentment. It creates a toxic environment of dependency. And if someone changes and someone's depending on someone to respond the way they normally do, that's when you have breakdown, and that's when you have estrangement, because people feel like you changed. You changed on me. You must not love me because you used to have no boundaries and you gave me whatever I want. You said yes all the time. You know, I can have your time, I can have your talent, I can have your treasure, I can have your body, I can have, even in family members, I can have whatever. And now you're growing up and now you're trying to change the dynamics of the family. I'm out of here. I don't like this relationship the way it is. I don't like the boundaries. I'm out of here. So an ex-codependent personality can be the catalyst for a family breakdown because that person has enabled people and no one wants to take care of themselves, and they like the system when it's dysfunctional and one person does everything, like Susie. So it is imperative that we look at creating boundaries, managing boundaries, and respecting them, and not weaponizing them to hurt people, but to create safety so that we can invite people who have left the system back in, and so that we won't be abused in the system, exploited in the system, and so that our families become a safe place. We want to be safe. Documentation and statistics states that a woman is most vulnerable and in danger when she's pregnant. She's beaten more and even sometimes fatally killed. Violence happens in the home. Sexual abuse happens in the home. We need to create boundaries of safety. We need to become safe people to love and to be in love relationships with. It is possible. It's new. It may challenge the generations because Big Mom always expects you to do something that you can't do anymore because it conflicts with your family values. You have to have a conversation with Big Mom. You have to have a conversation with your parents that you're deviating from some of the time because you need to do this or that. It's okay. The biggest piece of advice that I would give you and that you should share, that you can share with others, is boundaries with communication works better. Because if you just start moving differently, like I said, it creates panic, fear, and resentment. Even with language, it's going to be difficult. But you want to reinforce the love, and you want to reinforce the time you are with one another to show, I love you. It may look differently, but I love you. The love is real, the commitment is real, and the boundaries are real.